Blessings. We have a few questions have come in today, so try to give some answers. Dear Luang Por, when Luang Por said, enjoy your weekend, or enjoy when you are young and healthy, what should one enjoy and what should not enjoy? Can Luang Por give further teachings on that? Well, enjoy your weekend or enjoy being young and healthy. These are just, you might say, social conventions. When we wish each other well, there's so many different ways you can say it. Good luck, or may you be happy and healthy, may you be well, or enjoy your weekend. It's a basic attitude of metta, goodwill towards another person. But enjoyment in the wholesome sense means enjoyment within the boundaries of the Noble Eightfold Path. Sometimes people think Buddhists can't enjoy anything, any kind of enjoyment must be wrong or indulgent or coming from some kind of craving and attachment, and of course that's possible. So most kinds of sensual pleasure tend to stimulate craving in the unenlightened, unmindful mind. But there's also the wholesome pleasures that we can experience, say like spending time with people who have similar level of faith in the Dhamma, people who follow a moral code, like the 5 precepts, for example. Already that can be quite pleasant because you don't have to feel threatened or on edge when you're with those people. So that's a kind of enjoyment, isn't it? Also, it's the fruits of our good karma, to have enough food to eat, place to live, place to stay, enough clothes and the basics of life. So when you have metta for someone, you wish that on them. May you have enough of the basics of life. You're not struggling, you're not starving, you're not in trouble that way materially. And enjoyment, also the enjoyment, like you said, good health. Good health is a very fragile, uncertain thing. So sometimes we have good health, sometimes we don't. But it's a kind of good fortune, something to enjoy when you have good health. Or if you're ill, we wish somebody to recover, to get well soon, get recovery from their pain, their discomfort. So these are all expressions and reflections on what is a wholesome kind of enjoyment. On a more subtle level, you could say, well, the enjoyment of a peaceful state of mind. So best of all would be experience some samadhi. So you could say, I guess, I wish you a weekend full of samadhi. All right. May you have lots of samadhi. Because samadhi, by its definition, means the absence of the 5 hindrances, all the normal kinds of mental stress, like anxiety, anguish, stubbornness, sloth and torpor, dullness, endless desire, sensual desire, and so on. That's all absent. The mind is calm, peaceful and still in samadhi. So that's a form of enjoyment. As you cultivate and develop more samadhi, it's enjoyable. So we wish that on people. It's the enjoyment of morality, the enjoyment of samadhi, seclusion from troubles, seclusion from the world, that's another kind of enjoyment. And the seclusion of the mind from developing samadhi bhavana. And then ultimately the enjoyment of a mind free from defilement, completely free. Magapala Nibbana would be, you might say, in the Buddhist sense, the highest enjoyment. Sometimes people ask, well, if somebody reaches Nibbana, do they still enjoy anything? With attaining Nibbana, the mind is completely free from craving and attachment, suffering. Well, it's considered the highest happiness. You might say the highest form of enjoyment. So if you attain Nibbana this weekend, that would be very good. But even the Buddha had his recreation. The Buddha and the noble ones, they find recreation in jhanas and in samadhi. So when the Buddha maybe had some quiet time on his own, not teaching, not doing any particular business, he might enter jhana, a deep state of jhana, so like fourth jhana, that refreshes the body elements and the mind, very enjoyable. So that's how noble ones enjoy themselves. They enter a deep state of samadhi, peace, calm, that has a very refreshing effect both on body and mind. And sometimes you see this, say someone like Ajahn Chah, who was ill when I knew him, but sometimes you sensed he was entering a state of deep samadhi and he seemed to revive himself and freshen up, and his skin was always very pink and well oxygenated, the blood was well oxygenated. Even when he was old and frail, it seemed like the effects of his samadhi did have a revitalizing, refreshing effect on his body as well. So even the Buddha, even the Arahants have their form of enjoyment or recreation. But it's without attachment, without any kind of clinging. So it's the purest kind of enjoyment. So that's what I wish for everyone. Luang Por, what does dukkha should be known mean in relation to the first noble truth? Well, as you are aware, the Four Noble Truths, the Arya Satya Dhamma, are kind of central to the Buddhist teachings. But these are not just teachings to be discussed, theorized around, believed in. They're to be practiced as well. And so each of the Four Noble Truths has a certain duty, as you probably know. So like dukkha, it's the first noble truth, there is suffering, there is that which is painful, difficult to bear with. And the duty towards that is it should be known as such. Suffering should be known as suffering, dukkha should be known as dukkha. To do that, one has to pay attention, be mindful and reflective. Because often, by its nature, dukkha, whether it's just fleeting minor kinds of painful, disturbing things or major kinds of dukkha, by its nature we don't like it, we don't want it. It's unpleasant, a bit difficult to be with, whether it's just, an unpleasant thought, unpleasant memory, some unpleasant sensation, feeling within the body, unpleasant situation we enter into. We don't like these forms of dukkha, so we tend to react with craving. The When we're not mindful and wisdom is not present, we tend to react to dukkha with craving. I don't like it, I don't want it, I want to get rid of it. And that also leads us to seek for pleasure. So often the kind of pleasure that still, unfortunately, comes with dukkha hidden within it, is often sought after as a result of experiencing dukkha. So you're in a bad mood, so you look for something that will cheer you up. So you eat some nice food, get drunk, go and visit your friend, whatever it may be. Everyone has different ways of dealing with dukkha. So often we just run away from it. But the Buddha said dukkha should be, as a noble truth, it means you're willing to learn and look and learn what dukkha is, what's its nature. It should be known as such, as dukkha. But also, as one investigates and becomes aware of dukkha in all its aspects, one can see dukkha arises and ceases. It's not permanent. And that helps us to see that dukkha also is not self, which is very important, because one of the characteristics of the mind that is still caught up in dukkha, you're suffering, you tend to have a very strong sense of self. This is my dukkha. I am suffering. And because at that moment we're just reacting with craving, we're not reflective, we're not investigating. So not only are we experiencing dukkha and taking ownership of it and suffering, meaning we're not knowing dukkha as dukkha, because if you really know dukkha as dukkha, you wouldn't want to take ownership of it or identify with it. You would kind of hands-off approach, you would let go of it. But because we're deluded, clinging, caught up, well, we may react with different kinds of craving towards the dukkha that we experience, and unwittingly set up the causes for more dukkha. So dukkha breeds dukkha. And where does all this dukkha come from in the first place? Why do we suffer? It's because we've suffered before, and then the suffering from before has led us to do more unwholesome things, and that brings us more pain and more suffering, and it's a cycle over and over again. And we've got to learn to recognize that and start stepping back out of the cycle or breaking the cycle. And a lot of the Buddhist practice is around this point. We often extend the life of dukkha more than it needs to be. Dukkha arises as a result of past karma. If you can have enough mindfulness, patience, wisdom to see that, then you can allow dukkha to arise and cease. You're knowing dukkha as a noble truth and you just let it go, because it's dukkha, it's suffering. But because we're not always in the best state of mind, we often extend the life of our dukkha. We cling to it, make it worse, make it bigger, worse than it has to be, make it last longer than it has to be by all the negativity that it stimulates, the craving that it stimulates. So dukkha as a noble truth, it means you may still experience some dukkha coming to you in life, because that's a result of past karma, but you know it for what it is and you don't add to it or make it worse. You allow it to arise, cease, and you don't internalize it and make it into more suffering. Ultimately, only the noble ones do that perfectly. They do it very well, but we can all do it more and more if we develop right view, right understanding. We can treat the dukkha that we do experience correctly and end it and realize non-dukkha, the end of dukkha, quicker through our practice. Dear Ajahn, can you help me understand this confusing thing? When I hear the Buddha is self-enlightened, I become confused because I also have an understanding from the teachings that there is no self. Additionally, on the topic of enlightenment, is there a difference between enlightenment and supreme enlightenment? I have heard both stated regarding the Buddha. Well, as we often bring up in these discussions, this concept of self, not self, it can be a little confusing at first. Non-self is an insight that we gain and develop and gain through investigating the truth. When you begin practicing, you may not yet have much insight into not self. It's just an idea or a teaching you've heard. So you have to practice, and much of the practice is bringing you to the point where you do have a realization of insight into not self. But to start with, you start off with the idea, I am a self, maybe I am suffering and I want to end this suffering, so I'm practicing Buddhism. We use the idea of self because it's convenient. Conventional reality is like that. We use the term, it's the way we've been brought up to think of this body and mind, this person as a self. But the more you investigate that truth, you're going beyond this conventional reality, the superficial appearance, and things that you formerly thought of as a self, me, mine, myself. Maybe you start to change that view through the practice of developing mindfulness, insight, and investigating the Dhamma. So when we say the Buddha was self-enlightened, well, the important thing about the Buddha is he was the first enlightened being. Before the Buddha, there was no fully enlightened being. So that's why the Buddha had to be self-enlightened. And again, it's just a descriptive phrase to say he did it himself. He didn't have a teacher. But what he realized was that there is no self, and that's part of the enlightenment that he experienced. He's awakening to the truth that there is no self. But he did it by himself. So we're always kind of moving between these two levels of reality. The ultimate reality that there is no self, but the conventional reality, well, there's a Buddha. We call the Buddha a self, a supreme, self-enlightened, supremely self-enlightened Buddha. So it's partly just a matter of language and using the language more and more carefully and reflecting on the true meaning, but also just to see the difference between any other enlightened being. There'll be a student of the Buddha coming after the Buddha, and so they depend partly on the Buddha's teaching for their enlightenment, for their awakening, whereas the Buddha didn't. So other people are not self-enlightened, even though they practice for themselves and experience the fruits for themselves. But the seed, the cause, goes back to the Buddha because the teachings began with the Buddha's realization. And we call it the supreme enlightenment because of this point. He's the first and the one who is fully understood what enlightenment means, the process of awakening to the truth, and then was able to teach it to others. So it's supreme, meaning the best, because it's so beneficial for everyone else. The actual enlightened mind is the same for every being. Monk, nun, man, woman. In the time of the Buddha, in this day and age, if anyone experiences Nibbana, it's always the same purity of mind. But the Buddha was obviously the first, and he was the teacher, so he's special, and he had much more barami, developed more barami, more qualities, more special qualities than anyone else. The actual nature of the enlightened mind is the same for everyone. Dear Luang Por, is it true that if Venerable Ananda was to request for the Buddha not to enter Parinibbana, he may have stayed on for an eon or many, many years? The human body is subject to old age and sickness. Could the Buddha's body sustain that long? I definitely hope the Buddha is still around. Thank you. Well, strictly speaking, we say no, the Buddha is not around. He died, entered Parinibbana over 2,500 years ago. But we say his guiding influence is still with us today. His teachings, the influence he's had is still represented, say, in the Sangha and even in material ways. We build monasteries and offer them to the Sangha. So the influence of the Buddha is still around, the teachings are still here. But the Buddha's physical body obviously died and was cremated. We do have Buddha relics still. But they say, it is said, that a Buddha, if invited, could extend his life much longer than the normal human lifespan, due to the special merit, good karma, bharami of the Buddha. But it needs someone to invite. So, as we know from the texts, Venerable Ananda failed to invite the Buddha to extend his life at the time when the Buddha announced to Ananda that he would be entering parinibbana within a few months, 3 months. Ananda should have said, I invite you to stay on. But he forgot. They say under the influence of Mara didn't want the Buddha around helping people to get enlightened. He wanted him to be gone. So Mara is like the supreme obstacle for all practitioners on every level. And in this case, you could say it was Mara blurred Ananda's mind, so he forgot to ask or invite the Buddha, so the Buddha didn't stay on longer than his normal lifespan. You could also say it's just our karma, the people coming after the Buddha passed away. Their karma wasn't enough to be born in a time when the Buddha was around still. If they had had better karma, maybe that Ananda would have remembered to invite the Buddha to stay on for an eon. They say previous Buddhas, there have been some who have extended their lives in this way. We'll just have to leave that for discussion, because you can't prove that, but that's the idea, is that the powerful merit, bharami of a Buddha, means that when a Buddha decides to, or is invited to, and then makes that resolution, can maybe extend his life for the benefit of all beings. Sometimes we can see good karma, the effects of good karma on the mind certainly can seem to have a good effect on the physical body. A rejuvenating effect can maybe extend the body a bit longer in age, or help to recover from sickness better. State of mind certainly does affect the body. And the bharami of a Buddha is difficult to explain in words. Some of it is beyond words. So then, who knows? Maybe it is one of those special things a Buddha could potentially do. But at the moment, there's no Buddha here, so we can't prove it. Dear Ajahn, I misunderstood about Nibbana. I thought Nibbana is a physical destination. It is a state of being free from suffering, greed, anger and delusion, and ending of rebirth. Any advice? Well, the joke is that in Melbourne we do have, I think it's Nibbana Avenue. So it's a destination. You could get an Uber to Nibbana Avenue. But yeah, again, it's the conventional reality. We tend to always think of things in terms of what we normally understand and perceive on the normal level of thinking and describing things. So Nibbana seems like a place. Often people call it a realm. It's like a place, whether you see it as another world or another level, something higher. Generally people see it as higher. Some people describe it in all kinds of ways. They describe it as like this crystal room, like some kind of crystal room at the top of the tower that's really peaceful, and everyone is kind of floating around there in their bliss of Nibbana. This is all based on human imagination, human proliferation. Really, Nibbana is just Nibbana. It's not anything. It's not anything at all, because the whole point is it's beyond words to describe. It's the unconditioned. We say the unborn, the unconditioned, the deathless. So we tend to describe it by what it's not, meaning it's not a place, because a place would indicate somewhere you go and you're born there and then you die from there and you're reborn again somewhere else, which is why we say it's not a destination. But for language terms, you could call it a destination, I guess, or a goal to attain, to achieve, as long as you're careful not to start imagining too much, reading too much into these terms. As you practice, you're going more and more to the unconditioned, the emptiness of the mind. Concepts, ideas, labels, descriptions are fading, and there's just the more pure knowing, the more you practice and investigate the nature of these five khandhas as empty of self. So Nibbana is also, like the supreme emptiness, the highest happiness, because there's the absence of suffering, but also the highest emptiness. So if it's empty, it's not a room. I guess you could say it's an empty room. But a room has walls and a roof, it's something. And Nibbana is not something. So whatever you describe it is not that. But like you say, perhaps the absence of suffering is a good way of reflecting as you're practicing for Nibbana. Where there is still clinging, there'll be suffering. Where there's suffering, it's obviously not Nibbana. Where there's clinging to any aspect of these five khandhas, the physical form, feelings, perceptions, thought formations, sense consciousness, there won't be Nibbana, because you're clinging to something that's inherently impermanent, suffering, not self. As we cling in that way, we create the causes for more suffering, more birth. That's not Nibbana, because Nibbana is characterized by no more birth. So that's one clue or one reflection I use a lot. Where there's suffering, this is not Nibbana. There's obviously something to be abandoned, let go of there. Does the unconditioned awareness reflect the mind? Again, it's labels, descriptions of sometimes in meditation, describing meditation, we say, the unconditioned awareness comes through the cultivation of the Noble Eightfold Path, bringing the mind to just see clearly and know without delusion the way things are, and therefore there's no more mental proliferation. There's clear knowledge and vision of the way things are. Sometimes we call that unconditioned awareness. So it's training the mind to see through all these delusions and attachments, uncover or clear them away, clearing the path, clearing them away, to the point where the mind is just knowing, but without delusion, without ignorance conditioning it. And that's Nibbana. But once it's Nibbana, you no longer need to call it anything, so you don't need to call it the mind. But you could say, while you're practicing, you're training your mind, cultivating your mind to see the Dhamma, to come in line with the Dhamma by removing everything that is not Dhamma, meaning greed, anger and delusion. Removing that brings the mind to the unconditioned. Dear Ajahn, when I make merit, I wish deceased and other beings well. My friend told me that I should make wishes for myself or to others after me. Is this correct? I have to make wishes for myself when I make merit. If I don't get merit. You still get merit even if you don't make any particular wish. If you have a moment of mindfulness with the breath, true mindfulness, and maybe many moments of mindfulness, you don't have to wish anything, you're just knowing the breath, and by extension you're letting go of everything that is not the breath. Greed, anger, delusion, worry, fear, all the mental defilements. That's merit, but you don't have to wish anything, you're just knowing the breath or knowing any other meditation object, or just knowing the mind itself. When your mindfulness improves well to the point you can just know the mind from moment to moment. In the beginning, often we do make wishes because our mind is just gathering its mental energy together, and we make determinations, resolutions, we have goals. So say you offer dana, you often offer dana and say this merit may be a cause for Nibbana. Nibbana paccaya hotu. It's a very common thing. There's no real self we're aiming at there. It's not Nibbana is a self, but we're just wishing Nibbana, meaning the extinction of suffering, the end of suffering. That's a very wholesome wish. You could say there's still an attachment there, probably there is, but it's still a good starting point. Sometimes people wind it back a bit more. They say, I wish to be peaceful, I wish to be free from my anger that I'm experiencing these days, or free from my illness so that I can practice further. We often introduce all kinds of things, and so then the opportunity for kilesas to mix in with our thinking gets more, and we become, maybe you might say, more worldly, and we kind of are reducing our goals now. I make this merit so I can get the job, so I can become rich, is a very common idea people have when they make merit. So they're doing something good, but at the same time they're feeding attachment, so it's counterproductive. Best to try and pull away, change that way of thinking if you can, and just see that making merit through the practice of generosity, morality, meditation is all part of the path to be developed. And maybe reduce this tendency to always be wanting and wishing and trying to get things, because you're creating the causes for more suffering the more you do that. But we can dedicate the merit we make, the good karma, the happiness we've developed through our good actions. We can develop and we can dedicate it to a particular person, or many people, all beings. Or if we don't do that, we still make good karma, we still make merit. But sometimes it's appropriate to share merit. Departed family members, maybe someone you know or related to have just died recently, so you make merit for them, and that is considered a skillful action. Dear Ajahn, I am fortunate to have lived a life having discovered a particular illness where one mineral is absent in my body. The knowledge of this condition helped to bring relief with mineral medication added, replenishing the missing one 7 years ago. The side effects is excessive physical tiredness and challenges with walking. I am fortunate not to experience generalized pain. My concern and awareness of some internal sadness relates to my family who are not supportive, more so in the younger generations. I am not hearing them express or state fears for the condition, but they do have impatience and some anger is shared by them. I hear comments that I would be less tired if I did this, if I exercised more, for example. Another comment might be, if you lost weight, you would walk better. In other words, I suspect I'm not meeting somebody's hope or expectation that they have about my body capacity. I don't share a truth on telephone calls, so I'm now doing this in terms of my health condition and family. Oh, sorry, I don't share any truth in telephone calls as to how I am doing in terms of my health condition, and my family lives quite far away. In some ways this is not telling the truth. In another way, I am looking at a teaching where I ask, is this the right time? Also, is this necessary speech for me to share with them? This is how I have interpreted the Buddha's teaching on right speech. Is there a change I must make to be more honest, which would also seem to be what the Buddha asks of us in the Eightfold Path? Thank you for your guidance. Well, sounds like you're facing a few different problems, so you have our best wishes. There's the health issue to do with the mineral deficiency, the tiredness, which may also lead to other problems. A lack of exercise may lead to problems, I see. Then there's the problem of other people, family members maybe not being as sympathetic as they could be or as sensitive as they could be. Then there's how you're dealing with that and the problem of speech. So I think it's quite valid sometimes not to tell all the news and all the details of a physical condition to other people. Partly, if they're not that sensitive, maybe it's not going to doesn't help. Partly, it may be just convenient for you to be private on some things. Just keep it to yourself if you can. Maybe you share health data and information with your doctor and so on, but if other people are not that interested, probably no need to tell them everything, just maybe speak more generally. But that's not considered lying or false speech. Choosing what you say to who and to when, like you say, it's something you think about and just see what's the most appropriate response to questions and discussions. And sometimes you may tell more, sometimes less, depends who it is, I think. But I wouldn't say it's wrong speech just to keep some information private sometimes. It depends who you're speaking to, doesn't it? The time, the place, the person. Obviously you've got to learn to be very patient with any physical discomfort, all the limitations of your condition. Get the medication and the support from your doctors, and then work on your mind. So you'll need a lot of mental strength. So the more you can put some effort into listening to Dhamma regularly, I would say, would help you. Listening to Dhamma, reflecting on the Dhamma, and then doing mindfulness practice when you can, to strengthen your mindfulness and allow your mind to start seeing or knowing the Dhamma that you've heard and discussed previously, now through the practice to actually see it. Ultimately, the body, for all of us, however healthy a person is, it's a lost cause because we get older, sicker, and go towards our death. The mind is not a lost cause. The mind is always worth paying attention to and cultivating the aspects of the path the best you can. So, sila, samadhi, panya, mindfulness, wisdom. Put your effort into that, and that's why I say listen to the Dhamma regularly, reflect on the Dhamma, and just try and cultivate wholesome, skillful states of mind. So number one, metta. I would develop metta on a regular basis through meditation, through just general attitude, the way you think, the way you talk. Metta, appreciation for the help you do get, and tolerance, patience for the people who are insensitive or don't understand. Very common. Someone is ill, only you understand what you're going through. Everyone else will be caught up in their own stuff much of the time, so only a few people may have much of awareness of someone who's ill, suffering. So you just have to put up with that, but it's not the end of the world. You can still cultivate skillful states of mind. you can still bring your mind to the Dhamma in every situation. And I wouldn't wait for other people to understand and sympathize with your plight, your situation. I would just get on and practice for yourself and cultivate your own kindness and compassion for yourself, for others. And if other people come to help you and realize you need assistance, or they just sympathize with your difficulties, that's good. If they don't, or they're a bit slow, or they're just distracted by other things, let them go, don't worry about them. That's their business. Your business is to keep your mind wholesome, steady, reflecting on the Dhamma. I would say that's your priority, as much as you can do. Dear Ajahn, in this morning sitting meditation, I had an experience I am looking to understand. I had between 20 and 30 half-a-second flashings occurred of what looked like framed pictures. The matting of each picture was the same, an intricate pattern of wavy lines, quite wide in comparison to the picture, that I would place at about 5 square inches. All of these pictures were in a sepia black-coloured tone. The messaging was from an unknown source saying, "These are your past lives." I had no motion of my body, and my internal response was basically me noting that this was very interesting. I was very tired before beginning the meditation, and I have wondered if that tiredness can trigger what I'm saying is an unusual experience during meditation. I have had visual situations before in quiet meditation, but to my recollection, none have given any messaging to what I am seeing beyond closed eyes. And in this case, there was no reason provided in the time of these images occurring. Is this something to reflect upon? And if yes, can you suggest how I can best inquire to understand during reflection? And if this is something to let go of, please share with me why that is appropriate from the Buddha's teachings. I am curious as to how this came about, especially since there seemed to be a reason that came during the image flashes, with appreciation and gratitude. Well, many meditators have interesting visual images arise during the course of their meditation. Like you say, sometimes it's triggered by being sleepy, and one has micro sleeps in the meditation, so then one has a micro dream. That's quite common. So that micro dream can just be a flash of something, a memory, an image. So it's a loss of mindfulness and the mind throwing up an image straight away. That's quite common. Other people, it's their own mind. They're not sleepy necessarily, but their mind is bringing up partly memories, partly imagination, throwing stuff up, but again, quite possibly momentary losses of mindfulness mean that other stuff is coming up into the mind, what we would call the fruits of past karma, you might say. So maybe good, maybe bad, maybe of use to you, helpful, insightful, or giving you some understanding, or maybe not, and may just seem very random, and that's okay. Your aim is always to come back to the place of mindfulness, whatever way you're trying to maintain and develop strong mindfulness. Keep coming back to that. So that means, say for example, you are watching the breath. Go to the breath. Images arise, go to the breath. Images arise, go to the breath. You fall asleep, come back to the breath. Basically speaking, that's what you're aiming to do, is establish mindfulness over and over and over again, and let go of any craving for images, any reaction to an image, fear, interest, desire, worry. Observe those reactions, but then let them go and return to the breath. And keep developing strong mindfulness. Having said that, some people, when they do become more peaceful, their mindfulness does become stronger, more continuous, and they may experience what we call samadhi. It can be brief moments of samadhi or deep states of stillness. They also have images arising out of the samadhi. So some of those images, again, may be bringing some information to you. It can seem as though it's coming from outside, but quite often, and probably more often than not, it's actually arising from within your own mind. That's what I would observe, and what many teachers have said. Often it's just your own mind. Because your mind is peaceful, then it throws up an image which may lead to insight into some aspect of the Dhamma. So you can sometimes investigate these images. But I wouldn't make them too much out of them, because they're just images, just like, imagination, memory, a dream. They just arise and cease. So don't cling on to them or build them up into more than they need to be. It's just an image that may remind you of something, may help you to understand something, or may not. Some images are just images, arising, passing away. So you have to be ready for all that. So you keep your mindfulness and your reflective ability to know all these new images, and they may teach you something, they may not. As far as recollecting past lives, really that's a skill, very deep, well-developed skill that comes through developing the jhanas. But occasionally people do have glimpses of past lives, it seems, but it's more random and it's not something that's a skill yet. It's just in a certain situation or time their mind is peaceful. It seems they may have a past life memory or insight into a past life. It can happen as well. But also a lot of people imagine stuff and cling to those images and memories or imaginations and make more out of them than they should. And you have to be careful there. Because some people really want to know things, see things, have these experiences. And that curiosity and that desire can be a big obstacle in your meditation, because instead of establishing mindfulness, reflecting on impermanent suffering, not self, one is meditating and then hoping for something to happen or wanting it to happen, or if something does come up, really getting caught up in it. And you have to work hard not to do that. Come back to the breath, come back to the place of mindfulness, and keep observing anicca, sabbe sankhara anicca. All conditions arise and cease, they're temporary. And keep cutting off the mental proliferation, the doubt, the worry, the fear, the desire. Keep cutting off the proliferation as much as you can. So, you can note what has happened, but I wouldn't make too much out of it and just sort of file it away as a meditation experience, and then carry on. Next time you may have a very ordinary meditation, and you have to accept every time we meditate, the experience can vary, peaceful, not peaceful, images arise, no images arise. It's very unpredictable. What you want to do is keep coming back to mindfulness and developing insight into whatever you're experiencing as you meditate. So that's the end of today's Q&A session.